In 1939, the clouds of war gathered over Europe. In the coming years, the United States would be drawn into a bloody conflict that would eventually span the globe. Few corners of the world were spared, not even the quiet hills of central Texas. As America sent her sons and daughters across the seas to fight, and potentially give the ultimate sacrifice, many at home sacrificed as well, and in some cases, lost everything. Fort Hood is one of the largest military bases in the world. It was named after John Bell Hood, a Civil War general, who was known for his bravery and aggressiveness. Its original purpose was to train army units to counter one of the main instruments of the Nazi war machine, the German Panzer. The Panzer was a critical component of the German Blitzkrieg strategy, and the rolling hills and climate of central Texas were ideal for training tank destroyer units. The reservation today spans about 200,000 acres of land in central Texas. It has a population of about 71,000, consisting of military personnel and their families. It is surrounded by the communities of Gatesville, Copperas Cove, Killeen, and Harker Heights. Even in the face of worldwide economic hardships, the communities surrounding Fort Hood continue to prosper. This is due in part to the economic stability brought by the military community. Although the soldiers work and train on Fort Hood, many live in the surrounding communities with their families. But prior to 1942, the surrounding communities looked much different. Copperas Cove, for example, had about 350 residents. Before the post was established, there were many other communities in the area, such as Clear Creek, Sugarloaf, Elijah, Antelope, and many others. Countless farms and family homesteads dotted the countryside. When the war began, the young men and women of these communities were called upon to fight for their country. But as the war progressed, the country required more. It demanded their land. In 1941, rumors of an army camp reached Frank Mayborn, a town leader in nearby Temple, Texas. The army was originally going to locate the camp further north in Valley Mills. Mayborn resolved to bring the camp to Central Texas. He forged a partnership with Congressman Bob Pogue and created several committees devoted to his cause. Finally, after much deliberation, General Donovan surveyed the area. He met with Mayborn, who argued that the landed buildings in Valley Mills would be expensive, and that the Santa Fe Railroad was in Central Texas. Finally, General Donovan changed the location. On Monday, January 12, 1942, the U.S. Army announced that Camp Hood would be located in Central Texas. Initially, the Army took 28,000 acres. This land was vacated by 470 families living in the area. Many of the residents were farm families. The land they lived on had been theirs for generations. Those that moved had to say goodbye to family and friends. Children had to leave their schools, and many memories were left behind. As families were forced to move on, countless tears were shed.
Army men came in and moved their furniture. They took their animals and took their farm equipment and left. And as they were leaving, Aunt Emma reached up around the porch post and she started crying. And she cried and she sobbed and she had her arms around the post and said, "They've taken my boys and now they've taken my home." So it was very traumatic for her. A lady that refused to move, and on moving day, they picked her up in her rocking chair and put her on the back of a truck and moved her away. Her Bankies, they had lived out in the reservation. They took all of their land, and there were two of the brothers that bought land here in Copperas Cove. These are the Bankies that Banky Lane is named after. But one, he lived across from where is now the Catholic Church, and he was so distraught that he committed suicide.
The Army sent General Andrew Bruce, who was a colonel at the time, to educate the landowners about the military's motives. He tried to convince them that it was for the benefit of the entire country, that their sacrifice would save American lives. The land would house the soldiers and give them a place to train for war. Despite these efforts, many were still bitter. Some farmers went to court to try to save their land, or at least get a higher price. In one case, it was suspected that the judge was not giving fair trials. Because of this, the farmers who went to court usually lost their cases.
Gave the owners a slip of paper with the sum of money that they were going to get for their land, which was about half of what land was selling for to start out with. And then you had to go to the bank and borrow money to purchase a new place or home or whatever, and they didn't pay for it for 6 years. It was 1948 before they got the check on that little set dab of money that they were going to get for their former properties. So that was a terrible thing. I mean, you didn't have any money to start out with and then owe the bank interest on it, and the government paid no interest whatsoever. And it was a hard...
Before Camp Hood, the citizens in the area were just coming out of the Great Depression. The land they farmed was no longer fertile due to a lack of soil conservation, and most farmers were struggling. Camp Hood created many new job opportunities for people in the surrounding communities. Killeen housed an additional 6,300 construction workers. The boom also reached Copperas Cove, making it the largest city in Coryell County. Later, in 1950, Camp Hood was made a permanent outpost and was renamed Fort Hood. Businesses in the area were then able to make more long-term expansion plans.
They all wound up working at Fort Hood before. That was a very poor living here, really. My father-in-law was a ginner. He did the ginning, no, they should have gotten more for their land than they did. But most of those people, even like some of your kinfolks here, they started to work at Fort Hood, and it was, they got cash in their pockets, and it was a blessing in disguise.
In 1953, with the pre-Vietnam conflict, the Army took more properties. General Doane promised that they would not need any more land. But, in 1975, the Army wanted to enlarge Fort Hood for training purposes and planned to take another 59,300 acres. The landowners formed the Our Land, Our Lives campaign and debated with the Army that there was no war and that the land on Fort Hood was not being used to its full potential. Texas Senator John Tower and the Armed Services Committee sided with the landowners. In 2008, the Army tried to create a buffer zone, but this too was discarded. Today, many people are still bitter at the aggressive diplomacy that brought the base to their community, and that their land was taken from them. It was a difficult transition, and many are still resentful. However, today, the surrounding towns truly thrive, and are stabilized by the military and their families. Today, many disagree with the use of eminent domain for the development of Fort Hood. Some will tell you that how they took the land was a failure. Others will tell you that taking the land was truly a blessing in disguise.